According to my math, it is a Friday. Therefore, we're just going to talk about a couple things that popped into my head recently. One of which is I went and saw Jay Leno perform last night in Flint, Michigan, one of the towns where I worked in radio for quite a bit. I worked at 3 different stations there. One was an oldies station. One was a contemporary hits radio, CHR station. Not quite top 40, but, a very, very cool station. And then later as a talk show host. So that was a lot of fun to go see Jay in that town at a really cool place called the Capitol Theater. And I even got a backstage pass, which I'll add to my collection because I've got one there from Aussie Pink Floyd. But the interesting thing is that the Capitol Theater is this really cool, old-fashioned theater. And they've restored it. It's beautiful. And about a block away is where the building used to be that housed one of the radio stations I worked at. And it was this tall, 20-story, 20-story skyscraper that had fallen into disrepair to the point where they actually imploded it a while back. And it's gone now. Now there's just a vacant lot covered in grass where my radio station used to be. So that's always an unusual thing to see that. But went there with my brother and a bunch of people from Williams International, who are the people who helped Jay put his car back together again and get it running. And so several of those guys who were vital to that program came along. And we all got to go backstage and talk to Jay for a few minutes before his show. And the great part is that, I'll put up a photograph, is that Jay's wearing his signature denim, the Jay Leno signature denim collection. And, of course, when he comes out on stage, he's wearing a suit and a tie. I didn't take any photographs during the show. Among other things, they have signs up saying no photographs. But the audience there was shall we say, an older demographic. And I actually did not see anybody taking photographs or doing anything with their phones. And quite frankly, I was just watching his show. Now, there was a girl who came on who sang before him, whose last name was Dupuis, D-U-P-U-I-S, who's local. And she's an up-and-coming singer-songwriter. She's pretty good. I was impressed. But Jay came out and did over an hour, close to an hour and a half. Like, I'd say an hour and 20-minute set. And so if you've seen Jay Leno, you know that he hosted The Tonight Show. He would come out, crack 4 or 5 jokes, tell you who was on the show that night, and boom, that was it. And so I remember I saw him last year at the Soaring Eagle Casino in Mount Pleasant. I'm sure I talked about that before. And I was impressed because he did a closer to an hour show. But Arsenio Hall warmed up for him, and Arsenio also did a long set. But I remember at the time wondering, how's this show going to go? Because isn't he normally and then I realized, oh, wait, no, that's just my perception. He's been doing stand-up the whole time. It was the Tonight Show where they said, okay, do this little tiny set before you had your guests on. So it was pretty interesting. And what really impressed me was how much new material he had between the 2 shows. So I had seen him in December. I now see him in November, not quite a year later. And of the 80-minute set, a huge chunk of it was new material. So I've seen other comedians perform. I saw Stephen Wright, the guy with all of the, the surreal humor. You can't have everything. Where would you put it? That guy. And he had a cheat sheet on a stool, and he put the cheat sheet on the stool, and he's walking around, he's telling jokes, and occasionally you see him walk back the stool and kind of to remind himself of a joke he hadn't told yet. And Jay walked out wearing a suit and a tie, and just did his entire set. There were no awkward pauses, which to someone who speaks on a daily basis and studies what they say, because I got to edit these videos, I was blown away. And it was very, very funny. The show, I'm not sure it was 100% sold out, but it looked like it may have been sold out. But the place was packed and very, very appreciative. And he told a couple jokes that you couldn't have told on TV, but it's interesting. People didn't seem to mind. It's very, very funny. I'm not even going to attempt to tell you any of his jokes. I'm not a comedian, but just letting you know that I had a very good time seeing Jay Leno. So if he ever comes to a town near you, because he's still touring, he never stopped, I'd encourage you to go see him because it is a very good show. But also, I should mention that I've talked quite a bit about his turbine car and how the engine failed in it, and then through a bunch of different circumstances, it wound up being that my brother and a bunch of my brother's co-workers at a place called Williams International took the car and the engine, tore the engine apart, found the bad parts, replaced them as best they could, put things back together again, And by replace them as best they could, I mean that they replaced some parts, refurbished some parts, and did whatever was necessary to get a jet engine running again. And they did that. And so I've had a lot of people ask me about this because there's a documentary. If you don't know about the documentary, where have you been? But there's a documentary about the Chrysler Turbine Car project. There's a big chunk on Jay's car because Jay's in the documentary. So I'll put a link to the documentary in the description below the video. And if you haven't seen it yet, please do watch it. But the documentary ends with, and Jay's car is being worked on right now, and they're confident they'll get it running. But it's a cliffhanger. It's a cliffhanger. So I've had a lot of people ask me and say, Steve, why don't you write something about that and detail exactly what happened? And I'm right now in the process of putting that all together, firming that up, as we say. But it does look, I'm optimistic that it looks like I will be writing an update probably to my turbine car book, meaning the turbine car book, which now came out over 12 years ago, I think 14 years ago. Could have a second edition or something, but it's going to have an addition put into it. So it's quite a story, but it is longer than like I could do, say, in a video, for instance. And I want to make sure I get all the technical details correct because it is so impressive what was done to resurrect an engine that was built in about 1963, and to do that all these years later when no one's got the plans, no one's got the parts, no one's got anything for them, but they managed to do it. So that's extremely cool. So also talked to Jay a bit about that yesterday as well. But again, I will pass along details as they become pertinent and or true. I don't want to speculate about things in the future. And then finally, I got to tell you, I did a video a couple days ago about Hertz, and I said Hertz found a new way to do their business, and I said they abandoned their shop, abandoned their counter, whatever you want to call it. And it's a story I did where a bunch of travelers, including a mayor from a large city, flew into an airport in the state of New York. And when they got off the plane, they went to the Hertz counter, and there's nobody there. But they all had reservations, and there's a bunch of cars with keys in them, so they went and found cars and jumped in them and drove off, and later on returned the cars, and that was it. And it was just such a weird story, and even the airport said, yeah, Hertz violated their contract that we have with them. It requires them to have that counter staffed up until 1 hour past the last flight landing. And so they broke their contract with us. And so I did that story, and it's good for a laugh because Hertz just is the gift that keeps on giving. And I got an email, and I try really hard not to respond to emails by videos because I'm always concerned that people are doing it to see if I'll respond to their video. But I think this person was serious. And I've mentioned before that one of the dumbest ways to start an email is to say either, there's two primary ways. I used to really like you, but, or I'm so disappointed in you. In fact, a couple of years ago, I did an entire episode called How Disappointed in Me Are You? Because I don't know where people learn these things from, but that's a common thing I get. I'm so disappointed in you. Oh, did I let you down? Were your feelings hurt? Oh, I'm so sorry. And I got one of those just the other day regarding that Hertz video. And this person wrote, I'm guessing, I don't know, I didn't read it. I didn't read all of it. A lengthy diatribe about how I, as an attorney, because the guy said, I'm so disappointed in you. You're an attorney. And I'm like, what? When did this happen? Yes, I am an attorney. And he goes, and you did a video about Hertz where you skipped the question that everybody had, and that is, what's the legality of those people taking cars? And I thought to myself, if everybody's had that question, why are you the first person to raise it? So you should never choose to speak for other people unless they ask you to. Because the guy goes, that's what everyone wants to know. Everyone? I didn't think it was that interesting of a question. And so here's the thing. Did the thought occur to me while I was shooting the video? Yes, it did. Did I comment on it? I don't think I did. Did I have to? I don't think so. because the video did quite well in terms of how many people watched it, and the thumbs up ratio is quite high. I think it's above 99%. So the question is, you, the representative of all my disappointed viewers, the guy wants to know what the legalities are of people taking those cars. And he said, I should have addressed the fact that they're all, in essence, committing grand theft auto and they all could go to prison for that. Really? Really? Let me ask you a question. And this is the kind of thing where if we were in law school and I was teaching this episode as some kind of teaching moment, it's not a case, but let's pretend it was. And a student dared say that to me. Mr. Lehto, professor, you missed the fact that all these people committed grand theft auto. I would then look at the student and say, hey, stand up when you speak to me. I didn't actually do that. I always wanted to, but I never did. Let me ask you a question. Is Hertz shy about calling the police? From what we know in the 23 or 24 videos I've done of Hertz, are they hesitant to call the police? No, they're not. In fact, they call police and report cars stolen that aren't stolen. So we call that trigger happy. These are people who their knee-jerk reaction to almost anything is, oh, call the police. So 20 travelers came to the airport with reservations in hand, drove off with their cars, later brought them back, turned them in and walked away, and Hertz didn't call the police. Now, again, these are people who are known to call the police at the drop of a hat, and they did not call the police on any of these people. Does that possibly hint at something? Does it jar something loose? Are you still suggesting that all these people actually committed grand theft auto, despite the fact that the victim, Hertz, didn't call the police? Now you might say, Professor, I'm confused because there is something unusual about this transaction, isn't there? Yeah, the fact that Hertz reps weren't there, that's what was unusual about it. But remember, when you book the reservation and they take the reservation, that you have given them your name, your address, your phone number, contact information, and credit card information. And when you get there, they have told you, when you show up, we will have a car for you as per your contract that we drafted, by the way. So when you show up at the airport and go to the counter and there's nobody there, and you've got a contract that says you're entitled to a car, and there's a car right there with the keys in it, and you get in the car and drive it off, how is that theft? Because you, as a astute law student, know this. Theft is an intent crime. You must be intending to steal it. So in other words, let's suppose that overnight, as a practical joke, you took my Viper and had it flatbedded away and replaced with an identical one. Because they're not, they only made them in 2 colors that year. I've got a red Viper. Looks just like that, but bigger. And you flatbed it away, and you put in another Viper, and you made sure that the keys from my Viper will start that Viper. Okay? So I get up the next morning. I'm going to go for a ride in my Viper. I walk out to my car, get in my car, and I don't notice the fact that the license plate on the back is different because it's backed into the garage. Get in my car. I'm driving down the road. And you call the police and go, hey, my car got stolen. It's a red Viper, license plate such and such. Cop pulls me over. He goes, do you know why I pulled you over? I said, I have no idea, sir. He goes, and yes, I would say, sir. He goes, you're driving a stolen Viper. I'd say, I don't believe that could be true because this is my car. I've got the registration right here, proof of insurance right here. And when I hand the registration, he goes, well, that's the wrong registration. And I go, what do you mean? And he goes, the license plate on your Viper says this, but you hand me registration says this. Now, can I get out and look at that? I go back and look. Oh my gosh, it's a different license plate. But it's the same car, right? So I go over and check the VIN on the A-pillar and go, wait a second. Someone pulled a fast one on me. And of course, people then jump out, surprise, whatever. Could I be prosecuted successfully for auto theft with those facts? I got in someone else's car and drove off with it, believing it to be mine. The facts would show, assuming that the facts came out, the facts would show that the car in the garage, which was not mine, appeared to be mine to me. Therefore, I wasn't intending to steal it or deprive anybody of it. I thought it was mine. And given the facts I gave you, that's perfectly reasonable. A jury, of course, can do anything they want. But a judge hearing those facts would go, that's not theft. So let's back up now to Hertz. Okay? So you show up and you've got a contract. They've got your credit card information. You know as well as I do that if they go to another rental counter, rent a car, and leave, Hertz is going to bill these people and go, hey, you gave us your credit card, you booked a car and you didn't take it. Now you're going to say, but there's no one at your rental counter. They're going to go, oh, you got to talk to somebody up in double secret executive corporate on that one. So it makes more sense that the people did what they did, and none of them were intending to steal anything. They believed they had the legal right to take those cars, and they had paperwork to show that. And the fact that what I'm saying makes sense is the fact that Hertz didn't call the cops. So am I remiss? Did I disappoint you that I didn't mention that? Well, I could have done this diatribe in that video. But the video was just the correct length as it was. It was not too long. It was not too short. It was just right. It was just right. So there's that. So I hope you're not too disappointed in me, but that guy certainly was. And then finally, I'm going to mention, because I put up on Facebook a photograph of my knee. For those of you who don't follow me on Facebook, what are you talking about? And I'll put the photograph on the screen briefly so it doesn't have to gross anybody out. But I have an ATV, like an all-terrain vehicle. It's a side-by-side. And when I'm doing yard work, if I got to haul stuff around, I'll often put it in the ATV and drive it someplace rather than hauling stuff around. And so the other day, I wanted to put some grass seed down in a far corner of my yard. And so to do that, I use a grass seed spreader, and I had a bag of grass seed. So I put the spreader in the back of the ATV along with the grass seed, which I put inside the spreader, still in its plastic bag though. And I was driving around, and as I went around a curve, I heard a clunk, and I realized that the spreader had fallen over. And I went to jump out of my ATV, and my ATV has got this little metal tab on it, whose only purpose to exist appears to be to damage the knees of the driver and or passenger, because there's one on the other side, who may get in or out of the vehicle too quickly. And so I went to jump out of the vehicle to grab the spreader before it fell, which I managed to do, by the way. And I whacked my knee so hard, I'm not kidding, I almost blacked out. I was in so much pain for that brief moment where and I said this on Facebook, I let out a yell that I'm pretty sure everyone in this hemisphere heard. It hurt bad. And eventually I managed to straighten up, and I'm like, okay, I got to walk around, because if I don't walk around, my knee's going to go stiff on me. It's going to hurt even more. So I was walking around. I spread the grass seed. I threw the thing back in the ATV, and I climb in the ATV, and I see blood running down my leg. And I'm like, oh, God. Well, I may as well take a picture of it so I can talk about it later. Social media is doing that to us, because now we think to ourselves, hey, that's good material. Oh, that's good material. But I'm fine now. My knee is better. I can actually move it around without it hurting, but I'm still waiting for the big old gash to heal. So that's the deal. Jay Leno, someone's disappointed in me, and I hurt my knee, but I'm better now. So there you go. I'll talk to you later.